Well, you are tuned in to Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte. We are streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We're also coming to you over Radio Maria. Good to have all of you tuned in on the Radio Maria radio network as well. It's time once again for Faith and Sports, the most popular sports radio show on Catholic radio. I'm Chris, the producer, and without further ado, here he is, the host of Faith and Sport, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. However, wherever, whenever you are joining this program, this is Faith and Sport, where we apply our faith to all aspects of sport. So whether you're a referee, whether you are a parent, whether you are a athlete themselves, whether you're our administrator, any way you're involved in sport, this is the show for you, because we want to discuss sport, but we want to discuss it most of the time, at least much of the time, from the aspect of ethics, morality, and character. Ed, that crowd is going crazy. I think that's for you.
Yeah.
Folks, listen, we have a special guest in studio today, but first I want to say hi to Carolina Catholic Radio and Radio Maria. They're the co-producers of this radio program. Joining me in the studio today is Ed Billick. Brother, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to be back here, guys. Chris, boy, I tell you, man, this show continues just to get better every time I'm with you.
It is.
The fans love it.
Because of you guys. You guys are really rocking this thing.
Ed, welcome back to the studio, buddy. This is the first time you and I have been in the studio in several months.
Absolutely.
This is great. Thank you for being here. Here's what we're going to do today, folks. We're going to discuss all things ethics and sports, including our hit and miss with Ed Billick. We got the weekend headlines near the bottom or half of the hour, and then at bottom of the hour. That's a correct term, right? It means 30 minutes after the hour. And then after the break at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have more chatter with Ed on the week's best sports stories and weave in character, ethics, and morality into that conversation. And we're going to end the whole thing by talking about quick Q&A with Dr. A. Chris is going to shoot us up a couple questions. We have no idea what those questions are, but I'm a prepared sports guy, and Ed is prepared for anything Chris can show us. That's actually not true, is it, Chris? Do we know the question that you're going to
Well, actually, I try every time to give you a stumper, but I haven't been able to stump you yet.
I appreciate that, brother. Actually, Ed, just to let everybody know, in case they're wondering, I provide the questions for Chris. Oh man, I know.
Yeah, see why I can't stump him?
Brother, you had a great weekend, didn't you?
Absolutely.
You guys, I'm gonna nominate you and Jackie for Grandparents of the Year.
The boys were over yesterday. It was my daughter's birthday. Saturday night, so we all went to dinner together, and they had their little mac and cheese, and they were well behaved. And yesterday they were over while he took her out for her birthday. So all is good with the Billick and the Healy family.
Wow.
And then the oldest he turns 2 in October, and Shawnee, that's Dylan. Shawnee turns 1 in November.
Gosh, that's amazing.
Wow.
Time keeps moving on.
I know.
Yeah.
In fact, as your daughter will attest to, somebody said this great saying to me recently: with little kids, it's long days but quick years. And that's true, isn't it?
How about that?
You can have a long day with those little monkeys, and next thing you know, you're like, you're 6? What are you talking about? You're 3 years old. Like my daughter, she's in the 6th grade, and I go, well, what grade are you in? Like 3rd? And she goes, Dad, I'm in the 6th grade. I go, I'm not standing for that. I'm not going to accept that.
My mom turned 90, and she goes, well, I'm finally old. And I go, how about me? She goes, you're getting old too.
I thought for sure she was going to say, oh, Eddie, you'll never be old.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, folks, listen, if you're just joining us, you tuned in just a couple minutes into the program. This is Faith and Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach. It's called Exercise Science, right down the road here in Wingate, North Carolina, just east of where we do the show here in Charlotte. But once a week, I leave there. I jump into this little phone booth. Do they even have phone booths anymore? and I put on this little cape. I put on the little thing on my chest in the mask, and it says F&S. For Faith and Sport, and I come over here and do the show. And today, you're my little Robin today. I'm Batman and you're Robin.
It's bigger than a phone booth, but Chris got his Faith and Sport hat on. It's called the Pack.
The Pack.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that later.
You know what John reminds me of, Eddie? Remember those old Furniture Factory outlet commercials with Perry Brown used to have that suit on flying through the air?
Yeah.
That's kind of what John reminds me of.
Well, he's a professional professor. He's well prepared for these kind of hour shows. I mean, he's been talking about it for the last 2 days.
This is unbelievable. I'm just so glad you're here. I'm glad. Chris, thank you very much for everything you do for the show. I love doing this show. I get so much energy. As soon as that great music from the 40s bops in there, I'm ready to go. It doesn't matter what's going on.
Get all pumped up. And
I love it.
Ready to go.
Brother, as we do each and every time we're together, in fact, each and every show, we do what's called the hit or miss in the world of sport. And this is something that Ed and I, and of course when Carlos joins us, it's what Carlos and I do. But we talk about something that is positive. It could be spiritual or could be have something to do with our faith, but it's just something that's either positive or negative that we kind of see as, this isn't really good for our culture. This isn't good for the world of sport. As always, you go first. You have a hit or a miss for us?
Well, I got a miss, and I usually am a positive guy. I've had a hit. And I don't know if this is good for the culture or not, but okay, all you Pittsburgh Steeler fans, please listen in. Because,
is that you included?
Yeah, that's me. I think in life, John, you got to figure out how do you handle frustration? How do you handle embarrassment for your team? And how do you handle defeat, and how do you bounce back? But when you're so enamored with an organization, a good Catholic owner, the Rooney family, and you see what happened yesterday, it was truly a pathetic day for a proud National Football League franchise. And the question becomes, how did it get this way? Yeah, the Steelers lost to the lowly Cincinnati Bengals, which are no longer lowly.
No, they're not.
But 45 yards rushing, odd play selection, multiple drops, 4 sacks allowed, 2 interceptions, penalties all over the field. My friend Ron Cook of the Post-Gazette wrote this, and I got to share it with you. Heinz Field for the AFC North Division action against the Bengals on a spectacular autumn day. 58,000 people showed up. Now, it holds more than that.
Is that right?
They're not ready to come back yet. But many of them wish they would have left or never came at all because by halftime they were so hoarse booing the offense's pathetic play that they wanted Duck Hodges back as quarterback, and Roethlisberger was just stinking up the place. You hardly had any energy left to boo the defense, which was playing with guys that should have been on the witness protection program. After they gave up a killer 35-yard touchdown pass with 30 seconds before. We suck today, Cam Hayward said. This pretty much sums it up. For the third week in a row, Chris, Ben Roethlisberger and his offense couldn't produce even a single point in the first quarter, and they have managed just 4 touchdowns in 3 games. Things are so bad after Roethlisberger threw that second interception midway through the third. We should have switched to another quarterback, but they are not doing that. And we all knew this was coming. When you're 39 years old and you're not Tom Brady, why are you still trying to play football as a quarterback? It's frustrating. It's embarrassing. It's my miss for the weekend, but it's also miss for those that love a culture and love a great organization. It was just very embarrassing.
You are a spoiled man. This man, how many championships? They've been in the Super Bowl 6 times. They've won it 4. If you want misery,
they got 6 rings.
Yeah, of course, because a couple of them are AFC Championship rings.
No, 6 Super Bowl rings.
6. Oh, sorry, you're right.
Right. You're in your Detroit Lions. 8. How many trophies you guys?
Well,
I know the point. We're spoiled.
Yeah, exactly.
But rightfully so, because it's all hard work and organization.
I have good reason to be spoiled.
Tomlin has to be blamed for this whole thing, the head coach, because he's the one that hired this goofball offensive coordinator. He's probably a good man. Matt Canada his name is. But he was a college coach, and he's calling all the plays, and it's not a negative on the culture. And I know I was cranky yesterday afternoon. My wife goes, "You're cranky." I said, "Yeah, I am," because my football team lost. It was carried locally here in Charlotte on CBS. I sat back with a nice lemonade, and I wanted to enjoy a good game, and I did.
In the beginning, Chris, it was lemonade, and after
it was Mike's Hard lemonade.
Yeah, I was going to say by the halftime.
Well, it makes me not feel so bad about Washington's loss to Buffalo yesterday.
I know you read 3 paragraphs on how much your team stinks. Yeah, there's no doubt about it, brother. It's all perspective. And
well, now they go to Green Bay and they play the Packers.
Oh, yeah,
if you guys watched Aaron
win.
Rodgers last night, now that is professional football on display in the game they played against the 49ers. And you see some of these young quarterbacks are just scurrying all over the place, not getting sacked, making plays. Kyler Murray of Arizona Cardinals, there's some guys that are really stepping up. You're 39 years old, Ben. Go do your life's work. You can join us here on Faith and Sport.
Hey, thankfully, when they called Tom Brady out at 39 years old, he didn't come in. Hey, I'm glad the guy's still out there. I like that Ben's out there. I think that guy's a winner. I know, so you're shaking your head. But if he was having a great year, you'd be going, God bless Ben Roethlisberger.
Of course, you wouldn't anything when you
win.
But
the season's only 3 games old. Give the man time.
Yeah.
That's all he needs is more time. Right. They'll be carrying him out on a stretcher.
Folks, thanks for joining us today. You're listening to Faith and Sport. That other voice you hear is Ed Billick. He's joined me in studio today.
Yes,
this is fantastic. The other guy is producer Chris Pressler. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva.
Hit or miss, John? Come on.
I have a hit, but first I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, the folks who helped us out and make this show move along. Folks, did you know that insects are drawn to moisture? Moist wood is easier for insects like termites to bore through. Just like water, they go to the easiest path of resistance. Dry your home with Carolina Crawl Space Pro system and protect the health of your home. Call Jeff Wolf and his guys at Carolina Crawl Space Pros. In fact, if you go to the our website, and if you go to my little page, Faith and Sport, and you can see information, the contact, the website information, everything. In fact, if you call Jeff Wolf today, I understand if you give the code word of faith, he'll give you $250 off your.
So these guys handle crawl space, the moisture, and all that stuff underneath your
they
house.
get where they go where you don't even want to think about going.
Yeah.
So if you have issues with that, or you fear that
Carolina Crawl Space,
Carolina Crawl Space Pros. So call the folks at Jeff Wolf and Company at Carolina Crawl Space Pros today. All right, there you go. We heard from Ed on his. Hit or miss. It was really. Unfortunately, we should have waited till the end of the show because he's a little depressed. I'm gonna have to bring you out of this, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, mine is a hit, and it has to do with college football. This past weekend, the Minnesota Golden Gophers played Bowling Green University. Now, here's the big news. It was a huge upset. Bowling Green beat Minnesota.
Really?
Yeah, remember, this is just a team 2 years ago, prior to the COVID year, which everybody saw as a hiccup for Minnesota and a lot of other teams. LSU also had a bad year. But it's just 2 years ago. Minnesota was on top of the world. They finished in the top 10, and they were playing Bowling Green on Saturday, and they were favored. Minnesota was over Bowling Green by 35 points. Now, know that prior to Saturday, there were 60 games in the history of the NFL, at least since they've been keeping tabs, or in college football.
Okay,
they've been keeping tabs on this, where there was a 30-plus point underdog, and 60 out of 60 times, the team that was favored to win, of course, won. Right?
Okay.
Until Saturday.
Whoa.
Minnesota was favored by 35 points over Bowling Green, and Bowling Green won the game. So what that means, folks, is just to let you know, the bettors, the predictors of this sport called college football, were predicting that Minnesota would beat them by 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And they end up losing by a couple. Yeah. And it's the first time in history, at least since they've been keeping tabs like this in college football, that a team that was a 30-plus point underdog.
So my sympathies go out not only to the Steeler fans, for those Minnesota Golden Gophers fans.
It's true, but the reason that this is a hit, brother, is because if we just went by point spreads, especially big ones, the other team would go, well, they're predicting that we're going to lose by 3 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns or 7 touchdowns. We might not even play the game. But this is why we play the game, right?
That's right.
It doesn't matter what the sport is. You play the game and you show them. And if you lose by 7 touchdowns, you're predicted. Good for the people who predicted that. Pat them on the back. Hey, they made a great prediction. But this is why we play the game. And you can't you can't determine the size of the human heart.
Chris, wasn't it a while back App State beat Michigan a few years ago?
Yeah,
that?
That's right.
Why did that just come on my mind?
Chris, and congratulations to you, speaking of upsets.
Yes, I was going to just mention that I thought the bigger news and the bigger hit would be NC State's great win over the Clemson Tigers Saturday.
What was the
overtimes?
Any idea what the point spread was there?
It was the final score was 27-21.
20. Yeah, but what was the prediction on how many points that Clemson would win by?
I don't remember, but everybody was predicting that Clemson would win, but it turned out that.
Can you look that up, brother? Because that would be an interesting point of discussion
and
here.
What the amazing thing was, though, there was, like I said, 2 overtimes and 3 field goal attempts to try to win the game, and all 3, Christopher Dunn missed the field goal attempts. He went too far to the left on all 3 kicks, but the Wolfpack ended up winning it with a touchdown.
There you go. That was a great
awesome.
win.
Yeah.
In fact, you and I were talking before we went on the air. It's quite possible it's the biggest victory of NC State's football career, right? Good for you, man. Good for them.
Man, I was really wishing while I was watching the game that I was right there at the game to storm the field with all the rest of the fans. I was like, yeah.
But you're the next best thing. You were there in television, brother. You were there in TV land.
That's right.
Well, good stuff, Ed. We can close the door to the hit or miss of the week and just continue our conversation. Folks, you're listening to Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio, a co-production of Radio Maria. This is where we look at sport through a Catholic lens. And so we call this a regular sports show, but we really try to weave in ethics and character and morality and even just basic faith as part of our conversation. Now, speaking of faith and speaking of field goals, let's talk about what happened yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
In the NFL, a record was broken in a game between my beloved Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. Ed, take us through what happened.
Well, I tell you, first of all, you think about the Ravens and Lamar Jackson back on the field. Well, they're going to storm in Detroit. Well, Detroit's a better team. I got to admit, Detroit's a better team.
They're improved, you
But
mean.
didn't this go down to the last minute or
Oh, there
so?
was seconds left. Yeah, they were on literally, they were inside their own 20. They had 80 yards to go to score a touchdown, and they had about 45 yards to go to get in field goal range.
So is it Jason Tucker?
Justin Tucker.
Justin. And guess what he did before he kicked this 68-yard field goal?
66, I think it was.
He did a sign of the cross.
He did the sign of the cross.
Let's hear, Chris, the play-by-play. This is the Baltimore Ravens radio network.
A 66-yard field goal try for Justin Tucker. It would be the longest in NFL history if it's good. A 66-yard try. Tucker's kick is on the way. It is good! Crossbar, and it tumbles through. It is good! Time has expired. Justin Tucker with the longest field goal in NFL history. The hay is in the barn, and it's mayhem on the field.
It's mayhem
Very
on
good.
the field.
That was a great call.
Now, what did the coach do in the locker room? This caught my attention. So go ahead.
So before we go to this clip, so to set it up. Now, by the way, the field goal, whenever there's a field goal of more than 60, it often is just a few feet higher than the crossbar.
Yeah.
Because and that's why so many of those get blocked is because they can't kick it real high. They need distance on it. And this was the longest in history by 2 yards, right? The longest prior to this was 64, I think. But there's been numerous ones, as you and I saw just before the show went on, of 60 yards plus. But it hit the crossbar, and then it somehow made it
Bounced
over.
into the end zone,
almost miraculously. The coach of the winning Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh, is known to be a good man in the league. We've talked about him here on this show. I remember we had Matt Burke, a guy who played center for John Harbaugh with the Ravens, and said, every good thing you hear about John Harbaugh is true. He goes, I love playing for that man. And here's a man of faith, and here's a man who takes his Catholic faith seriously. And this is what John Harbaugh said about the game and after the game.
The thing we talked about in the locker room and the thing that I take from this, just being honest and as direct as I can be, was how humbling to see something like that is, to be on the sideline for that with our players. They play their hearts out and they give you everything they got. And the thing that they do is they keep faith. They keep faith like most times you just talk about and you dream about, but it's hard to do. And I believe because the perspective that I have is that things like that just don't happen. And sometimes the way God works is He makes it clear to us that it can be no other reason for the things that happen. In other words, He's going to tell you that the glory belongs to Him, and that's the only place it can go. And in a situation like this, right, it becomes very obvious that that's what happened. That's how I see it, and I know many of our players see it that way, and many of our fans see it that way. When you look at it from the perspective that I'm talking about, you see there is no other place that you can give the glory. So for that, all the glory, all the honor goes to God.
There you go.
You know what's interesting, and
Sure.
I'm a Steeler fan, and I don't like the Baltimore Ravens. But in hearing him talk that, he's now on a different plane for me of respect.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's flush this out a little bit, though. He's clearly not only referring to the win, but he's referring in particular to the field goal that was made. This miraculous effort, this miraculous outcome, it added all the more that it was literally, I think about 2 seconds were left in the game. They needed this kick to win the game. It looked like it was almost impossible because there was less than 30 seconds left when they got the ball and they were near their own end zone. When their quarterback, Lamar Jackson dropped back to throw a pass, I think he was pretty much near standing in his own end zone. And they made a couple plays, and next thing you know, they're in semi-field goal range. Nobody actually thought this guy would make it. The ball gets kicked cleanly. It hits the crossbar, literally bounces up in the air about 25 or 30 feet. That's how hard the ball was kicked. And then it just drops right over, and the referees signal good. Now, here's the thing, Ed. I appreciate the feat, all right? I appreciate the excitement in it, the last secondness. It's not just the last second of a half, but it was the last second of a game, and it was to win the game. Now, he's talking as if, that this is a true miracle, and things like this only happen if there's some divine intervention. But I challenge you now, brother. Let's have this discussion. Isn't it possible that God is not involved in the outcome of any sporting event whatsoever? Isn't that kind of what you and I grew up believing, that God he's interested in how we play, not who ends up winning or how they win?
How many Catholics pray at church for their team to win that Sunday? How many priests talk about the Philadelphia Eagles or their team, the Carolina Panthers?
That's right.
How many do that now? Yeah, we all know that that's not the case, and we pray for divine intervention, but all good things come from the Lord. May not be that kick, but this man here, Justin Tucker, he was blessed with something that day, I believe. And, so why not? What harm is in it to think that God is involved in all good things?
I understand, but of course, you and I were talking about this before we went on the air, and when we say all good things, we are referring to things that are ethical or moral,
right?
Something that involves our personal relationships with each other and with God and so forth. But it is possible that there was divine intervention in this way, right? God's greatest creation is the human body.
Yes.
And
that's right up your alley.
That's right. This is what I talk about.
I've written my books. Where we're going with this. Continue.
Yeah, and I've written my books on theology of the body, and I just want to get people to kind of view their body from a different angle, especially young people, that they see it as something that they need to perfect instead.
Image and likeness.
Yeah, we want to see ourselves as an image of God, and we want to see this as a great tool to serve God and serve one another. By the way, you don't have to buy my book now, everybody. I just gave you the 2-sentence version of my book. But the reason I bring that up is that there is goodness in the human body. And in part of it, and like I say at the end of every show, I give this quote from John Paul II. Give thanks to God for the gift of sport, in which the human person exercises his body, intellect, and will, recognizing these abilities as so many gifts of his creator. And I think that is beautifully stated. And this gentleman, Justin Tucker, as all athletes do, we exercise the body to perform and to do these great feats in sport. And I think something like this, and I mean this, I think although it happens in an instant, stuff like and actions like and skills like kicking a field goal are things of beauty. And maybe that is ultimately what John Harbaugh, the coach of the Baltimore Ravens, is referring to. But it's really difficult to analyze his quotes as anything other than the reason we won is because of God's intervention.
Yeah, and I don't think God let the air get a little thinner or he pushed the ball over to hit the crossbar. But I do believe that he answered Justin's prayer.
That's right. He did the sign of the cross. In fact, if you folks go to YouTube and just put in Justin Tucker,
we did not know that until you and I started doing pre-work for this show.
That's right. About 15 minutes before the show, I said, Ed, take a look at this. And the camera is clearly on Tucker as the team is getting set up and the placeholder is getting on one knee, right, to hold the ball for him. And he puts his arm up to kind of point in the direction in which he wants to kick it. And then after he puts his arm down, he does the sign of the cross, which indicates he's probably born Catholic and maybe even is a practicing Catholic. But, of course, what do you think? What's in general, when somebody does the sign of the cross at the plate in baseball, before a kick in football, what do you think their thought is for the most part?
Well, I can't judge how deep or not deep. Is it just for the camera? Is it more for their family or for their wife or whoever?
But what be kind of like
Lord, give me the skills. You've granted me, a body, these physical attributes, so I could be successful. Help me achieve what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, and I think it would be appropriate, honestly, to say something like, allow me to do the best that I can.
And no difference than the prayer we say before this show. You want to have your words go to our listeners to help them clearly understand, maybe inspire their faith. I think everyone does that in their kind of work.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a positive spin that could be put on that. Either way, I love the fact that here's a man of faith. Here's a person that wears his faith on his sleeve. And he has granted a lot of interviews, at least I know of a couple, to Catholic sources. He's proud of his Catholic faith, and I think he was really moved. Now, the day after the game here, it's quite possibly he might look at his wife and go, that was a little much.
Or if we missed the field goal, the devil got involved. That's Satan.
We don't want to say that.
Say a prayer to St. Michael. Get those evil spirits out of there.
That's
See,
right.
You can
That's
look
right.
at it all kinds of different ways. But I tell you, even our friend Frank Wright, who's the head coach
That's
of
right.
the Indianapolis Colts, who
That's
is
right.
a devout man of faith.
That's right.
I pull for the Colts because of him. I pulled
that's
for
right.
Jordan Spieth because of his Catholic faith.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of Catholics do that, and I think a lot of Christians do that as well. If they find out somebody is a practicing Christian, they just naturally pull for them a little more. And I think it's true about Catholicism as well, that when we find out somebody's Catholic, just like Jordan Spieth, Brett Favre, and a lot of, there's a million other guys, Roger Staubach back in the day and so forth. There are thousands of them, but I think you're right. You have that connection with them. And as I said on this show many times, one of the reasons I appreciate that a great deal, and the main reason I appreciate it, is because it's so easy to turn from God when you have all that success.
No, you're absolutely right.
Right? It's
You're
so
absolutely
easy
right.
to say, I've done all this by myself. And sometimes those people never turn to God, or if they do, it's not until later on in life.
Yeah, and you're a successful father and professor and talk show host like this, and give all the glory to God.
Absolutely. Folks, thank you for joining us today. That's Ed Billick, the other voice here. He's sitting in the co-host chair. I am Dr. John Acquaviva. The other voice you hear is from the producer, Chris Pressler. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. It's a co-production of Radio Maria. This is the show, Faith and Sport, where we merge sport and virtue. Ed and I get together every few weeks. Either way, the purpose of this show is to bring a lot of topics that aren't normally talked about on ESPN Radio and CBS Sports Radio. We want to talk about the ethics as they relate to sport. We want to talk about faith as it relates to sport, character, and so forth, even morality. And I think there's a lot of interesting topics out there. And frankly, I think the big guys like ESPN and CBS Sports Radio, they miss the opportunity often to talk about these issues because I think they think it's too controversial or simply a lane that they don't want to go down.
So stay tuned for the second half. We got a few other topics that'll get you to think a little differently.
Let me tell you, folks, what some of the stuff we're going to chat about. One, we're going to talk about the Big Ten's ruling on if you miss a game because of COVID.
Ooh, I want to hear that.
And we're going to talk about the rise of gambling in on professional sports and other sports. I think that's a great conversation. And I want to another hit. It's like hit number 2 is I want to give a shout out to York Catholic High School, in which they've created a new way to work out. Also, if we have a chance, I want to get to. There is a gentleman who is a golfer at a Division I institution, and he's 35 years old, and he's just a freshman. So we're going to talk about all that after the
You
break.
hung around high school for a long time, huh?
But right now, let's do weekend headlines. Chris, do some music.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
It's time for Weekend Headlines with Dr. John Acquaviva on Faith and Sport.
All right, here we go, folks. In the PGA, Team USA won the Ryder Cup versus Europe. The American team was loaded with players like Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, and Dustin Johnson. Next up on the tour is the Sanderson Farms Championship in Mississippi. In NASCAR, Denny Hamlin took the flag at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway to win the South Point 400. Next up for the boys is the Yellowwood 500 at Talladega. Chris, I don't know whether I prefer to say or like saying more Yellowwood or Talladega. They're both great words, aren't
Yeah.
they? Talladega. Everybody just likes to say that word. Talladega.
Racing at Dega.
Major League Baseball, we're inching closer to the playoffs, and a few teams are having great races like the Red Sox and the Yanks fighting it out for the wild card spot. And in the West, San Francisco Giants and the LA Dodgers are battling it out for first place. The playoffs start October 5th. But Ed, the big story is the St. Louis Cardinals. They've won 16 games in a row. And the amazing thing, there's still several games from the national record, which was held almost 100 years ago. I think it's like 24 games in a row.
You know, amazing baseball town. It always has been. My whole life. St. Louis is a baseball town, and I'm so happy for it.
I know. I am too. It's unbelievable to say, since you're a Pittsburgh guy, I'm a Detroit guy, but I'm happy for those guys. NCAA football, huge upset this weekend. Chris's NC State shocks Clemson and just about knocks them, the Tigers, out of the top 25.
Let me give a shout out to Amika Mezzi from Marvin Ridge High School. I remember watching him play basketball and football down there at Marvin Ridge, and he's a wide receiver, fourth-year senior. He's doing extremely well for the Pack.
He really is.
Also pushed out of the polls was Wisconsin, who got beat soundly by Notre Dame. Huge games this weekend, though. More stuff to look forward to include top 10 matchups. Notre Dame versus Cincinnati, and UGA, that's the Bulldogs, are taking on Arkansas. So there you have it, Ed. Sports news that may or may not change your life. Listen, folks, we got another half hour in this show. Stay tuned. Chris, take us into the break, and then we'll come right back in a few minutes, folks.
You are listening to Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We're also broadcasting across the Radio Maria Radio Network. So glad to have all of you Radio Maria listeners tuned in for this all-new edition of Faith and Sport. Make sure you stay right where you are, because right after the break, we've got more Faith and Sport coming up. And remember, when you visit carolinacatholicradio.org or on the app, hit that donate button.
Carolina Catholic Radio needs volunteers. We're currently looking for help in local news, public relations, business development, and digital asset management. Please join us. For more information, contact us through our website at carolinacatholicradio.org.
Teachers that care, professors that care about you. Just an awesome experience all around.
There's peace here. There's encouragement here.
Faculty, everybody that works here, they really set you up for success.
I don't think I have ever felt as loved and as supported and as encouraged as I have at the Abbey.
There's something here that's underlying and intrinsic. There's like a spirit of love and community. And I think the Spirit is God's presence here.
Belmont Abbey College, a world away, but close to home. Visit us at belmontabbeycollege.edu.
Calling all Catholic men of the Carolinas, this is Jason Murphy for the Carolina Catholic Media. 30 in 30, the road to a comeback. The men of the Charlotte Diocese are uniting to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith on local radio airwaves. This month, we are kicking off a pledge drive to get our local Carolina Catholic radio station, AM 1270, back on the air. In these extraordinary times, we believe it is more important now than ever to evangelize on public airwaves to the tens of thousands of souls who travel on the highways around metropolitan Charlotte and beyond. So how do we accomplish this? Here's the math. Phase 1, 30 days. If 1,000 men come forward and donate $1 a day for 1 month, we can put Carolina Catholic Radio back on the air. 1,000 men times $30 donation equals $30,000. Phase 2, 90 days. Help Carolina Catholic Radio get back in the black. If 1,000 men make a $20 monthly donation from October to December, it will pay off all debts by the end of year. Phase 3, ongoing. If 1,000 men commit to an ongoing $10 monthly donation in 2022, it will allow us to meet projected monthly expenses throughout the year. Can we count on you to be a part of this comeback? Please be sure to download the Carolina Catholic smartphone app from your Apple Store or Google Play to experience all the great local content available through Carolina Catholic Media. This vitally important and historic comeback is sponsored by Catholic Men of the Carolinas, the Knights of Columbus, and the Fraternity of St. Joseph's Men's Group. If not us, who? If not now, when? For the Carolina Catholic Media Network, this has been Jason Murphy. God bless, and Esto Vir.
We are back with more Faith and Sport here on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We're also broadcasting across the Radio Maria Radio Network, so glad to have you Radio Maria listeners tuned in today for more Faith and Sport. I'm Chris, the producer, and once again, here he is, the host of Faith and Sport, coming to you each week, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the show. Listen, if you ever want to get in touch with me, there's a couple ways in which you could do it. One of them is you can write me at john@faithandsportradio.com. That's John at faithandsport. That's A-N-D in there, faithandsportradio.com. So if you have a comment about the show, if you have a question about the show, or in particular, if there's somebody in your community that you'd like to see us interview, like they're just outspoken in the world of sport, but also about their faith. They're a winning coach. They're an interesting coach. They have a great story. If they're administrator for sport, if they're a referee in sport, reach out to us and let us know who they are, and then we can reach out to them and see if they'll be a guest on this show. It's just what makes this show great is people like Ed in studio and the people that have joined us so much for so many good interviews over the years. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise physiology at Wingate University, which is just east of here where we do the show in Charlotte. Ed is a veteran in radio. In particular, he works for WBT, which is right down the road from where we are now. Ed, thank you for being here, buddy. How's it feel to be back in the season?
I'll tell you, it's great seeing you guys and with Chris and everything. And you guys, a little family atmosphere here on Faith and Sport and always super topics.
That's right.
And super guests. Who you got coming up here? You got anybody lined up for the next couple weeks?
Yeah, next week we have Tom Van Buskirk, and he is him and his wife started an organization. It's called Positive Coaching, and it's because they just want to see their kids, and they wanted to see their kids, and so many kids in their neighborhood just have a positive experience in sport. And they just saw so many of the people that were involved in sport were just out for the win, and there was a lot of negativity and so forth. And this interview is going to be part 2 because we interviewed them earlier this summer, and they. It's just about their efforts to make the world of sport a better place to be.
Your guest for next week's show, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Folks, I want to start you off there's a few things we want to talk about, including the quick Q&A with Dr. Ray that Chris is going to shoot us a couple questions, and Ed and I will respond in whatever way we can to those mysterious questions. But one of the things I want to talk to you guys about is something that has been in the news in the world of sport it's been close to dominating conversation in the world of sport, and that is this new kind of aspect of professional sport and college sport, and that is gambling. And I want to, there's a lot of different directions we can start this, but I just want to demonstrate how big this has become. I think a lot of our listeners probably have watched or watch at least every once in a while ESPN. And ESPN, there's what's called the bottom line. There's a ticker at the bottom, and there's constant reviewing of information. Upcoming game, the scores from last night's game, something that's going on currently, like baseball games, whatever the case is. And in the period of 15 minutes, they have hundreds of words, and there's lots of different kind of pieces of material that are shared with the fans.
Yeah, recent trades, all kind of different things.
Just one thing or the other. Anyway, I noticed, Ed, last week, for the first time, I saw this message, and the message was about problem gambling. So call this number if you're a problem gambler. But the irony was, it was right after them showing the odds for the NFL. So each game, like for instance, let's say it was Dallas at San Francisco. The Dallas Cowboys are an 8-point favorite against the 49ers. And then the very next game would have the similar. So clearly the odds are for one thing and one thing only. And that's for people interested in betting on the game. And then right after all those games are flashed, it gives a 1-800 number and says, if you're a problem gambler, don't hesitate to call this number. And it's kind of bizarre. Right, but I guess they do that on the package of cigarettes, right? I'm sure that there's something on some alcoholic beverages. They say if you have a problem drinking, call this number. But I do find it interesting. On just a few years ago, people like ESPN and other outlets of sport would not touch point spreads or anything about the over and the under. And now it is a thing. And I think it is interesting, and it's a little surprising and sometimes even shocking on how much they want to be a part of this.
Folks, if you want to pick up the recent Sports Illustrated, the September edition, that comes out once a month now, it's all on gambling. And they start off by talking with all the commissioners and all the heads of the sports 5-10 years ago and their thoughts on gambling. Not going to touch it. Yep. It's bad for the sport.
Right.
And today they are promoting the heck out of it, like Dr. Acquaviva was just saying. And why is that? Because it is a $1 billion business unto itself. Right. And who's reaping the benefits? The teams, the networks, and of course the leagues.
Yeah, and one of the things that that they wanted to do was, the NHL, for instance, they want those bets to come through NHL.com. Right. And they want to take a certain percentage of it. So they don't want to go in through your local bookie. They don't want you.
So all Chris's buddies, they want to take his business away from his bookie friends. Oh, you got bookies? The NASCAR bookies. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think
kidding around with you, Chris.
I think this is so interesting that this is back in the mid 1960s, and a lot of the older guys like you and I would know about this. That both Alex Karras, NFL football player, and NFL star, even though Karras was a perennial all-star, Paul Hornung, the Golden Boy from Notre Dame.
Yeah,
they both,
Catholic school.
Yeah, they both got suspended from the league for a year for gambling.
Yeah.
And I think it was both on their own teams. I know that Paul Hornung gambled on the Green Bay Packers.
Well, he also had other demons drinking and womenizing and all that, too.
But that stuff aside, that's why he and Alex Karras got suspended.
Bad for the sport.
Now listen to this. When they were reinstated, both after a year, this was their predicaments. Or this is what the conditions were for entering the league again. Neither could visit Las Vegas. We have a NFL team in Las Vegas.
We got casinos in around every corner now.
Hornung wasn't allowed to attend the Kentucky Derby.
Why?
Much less bet on any horse race. Karras' reinstatement came with similar restrictions, including the sale of his stake in a bar. And needless to say, it was at the time thought to be, I think, normal. Everybody just said, yeah, you can't bet sports, right? Because it was seen as something that was immoral, unethical for sure. And now it's something that is fully being embraced, not just by the players, not just by the coaches and the administrators, but by the leagues themselves. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, but it's the same thing. And I would equate it a little bit, Ed, to marijuana. 20 years ago, people were saying it's a gateway drug into a lot of other drugs. And now there are 5 states, I think, that have made it legal, and there's probably another dozen or so that are trying to make it legal. And the same thing with gambling. I think that there are several states now trying to make it so it's legal to gamble in their state.
And I don't know if we're going to have time to dig into this, but I sure hope it doesn't play in the outcomes of the events.
I hope so, too. And, of course, that's what everybody's fear is and was. That's why the NFL for so long wanted nothing to do with Las Vegas. And now the Raiders, the former L.A., the former Oakland Raiders, are now in Las Vegas. And as soon as that happened, is the second that was announced, I said, they're going to give way to gambling. Because think about it. The very first thing they wrote in this Sports Illustrated article, neither was allowed to visit Las Vegas. And now we have a team in Las Vegas. The irony, brother, the irony.
Yeah, and with all that said, then Why don't we just let Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame?
Well, yeah, there's something to be said about that. And there's a lot of people who agree with you on that. But there is something a little different. We can't get into the show here.
So what advice do you have for us good men and women of faith on this regard?
Well, you've heard me read it before in the show that even the church, the Catholic Church, teaches that it's okay to gamble.
Well, I tell you what, I was at a Catholic church up in Erie, Pennsylvania 2 weekends ago.
bingoing.
They had a brand new Corvette out there, and you had $100 tickets to get a chance on a Corvette.
And it's a form of gambling, clearly, right?
Is it?
50-50 draw? Sure, it's a form of gambling.
It's donating. No,
Yeah.
it's not.
No, that's not what you think?
No.
Well, I guess I do like the fact that it's just like bingo, though, right? Half of the
bingo, yeah.
But half of
How about the lotto?
Yeah, no.
Well, that's a
they
little
call
different,
it the
of course.
education lottery.
Yeah,
It's okay to.
Yeah, but here it's not based off of an outcome.
In what?
Like a sporting event. Who's going to win and who's going to lose and where that may go. But again, it begs to go to your, what's the thing, your weakness of the gambling thing.
Yeah.
That people can lose their houses and their families,
course.
and I know people that have done that.
No, of course. There's a lot of sad
So what
stories
advice do you have for us there, Dr. A?
Well,
You got to know when to hold on.
Yeah, that's right.
Know when to
there's no
fold.
question about that song and about that kind of theme of that song is you have to know when to stop, right? That's the main thing. And it's okay. The Catholic Church even teaches it's okay to play games of chance, as the Catechism calls it. But when it starts to impact ability to take care of yourself, especially others like your family, that's when it needs to stop or at least be curtailed to a great extent. The Catechism talks about it, and there are some religions, of course, want to ban it completely. They think it has everything to do with the opposite of what God is and what stands for, and it's considered immoral living. I do agree. I look down on nobody who gambles. I have several friends who gambled. I have gambled on football in the past. It's never been a real big passion of mine. I haven't won or lost a whole lot of money either way. I don't have a strong feeling about it, but I do see the, for lack of a better word, the irony or certainly the way that the NFL and other major sporting leagues have flipped on the whole thing. It's an interesting conversation. And I agree. You just handed me the Sports Illustrated, the gambling issue, it's called.
There's a lot of good
There's
reading.
There's a whole lot of stuff to be said about just these few pages in here. Folks, listen, before we continue, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the show, and that's Carolina Crawl Space Pros. Living here in the Carolinas, we have a high level of humidity. Many times, a high humidity level in the crawl space can cause your beautiful hardwood floors to buckle. So listen, visit our website, go to my page, I should say, and then you can see the contact info for Carolina Crawl Space Pros. And in particular, you can get the details on how to get $250 off any work that Carolina Crawl Space Pros does for you. All right, brother, let's move on to the next thing. There's something I want to share that is far less controversial, but is certainly something that is worth noting, and it's my second hit of the day and has to do with something I mentioned before the break, and that is a high school in Pennsylvania, York, Pennsylvania. That's probably not really near where you grew up, is it?
Central part of the state, and it's near York College where my sister got her nursing degree.
Oh, did she really? Yeah, I like that part of the state. It's down
near Harrisburg, down near Lancaster,
Yeah.
Gettysburg, that whole area.
It's nice.
Chambersburg.
And I got this email from a friend that he notified me of this kind of this football team at York Catholic High School and how they're integrating their faith into their workouts. And it's called the Stations of the Cross workout. So this is pretty common within...
Well, it sure was a workout for Jesus.
It was, brother.
Oh, my Lord.
And what this is it's very common for sports teams to do what are called stations or what is called circuit training, where you go to one station, you do some type of workout, and then you just move at the end of, say, 60 seconds or 90 seconds, and then you either walk or jog or somehow get to the next one, and then you do another workout for the same amount of time, and you're in little pods, right? Groups of 5 or 6, something like that. And this coach at Catholic High School, York Catholic High School, named Eric Depew, said this about this form of working out. All glory to our Lord and Savior for planning in someone's heart to create the Stations of the Cross workout. It's always a winning move when you have Jesus calling the plays. The workout helps you get a feel of what Jesus went through and also see what he did for us. This workout is a powerful and emotional tool to show how much Jesus loved us. And he, in the school, but in particular he, Eric Depew, I want to mention this because he is doing something that I think a lot of Christian coaches want to do, and that's truly integrating faith into the sport that they coach, right? And he's done a great job. And this is a quote from one of the players at York Catholic High School. The Stations of the Cross is a challenging workout, but it's not all about the workout you get from it. Throughout it, we grew a bond like family because your teammates, brothers, are suffering through the same pain you are, and because of this, you're able to motivate and feed off each other's energy. With a brother, you can push through any obstacle in your path. It's not about going every rep or every set. It's a team-building experience that I will never forget. The Stations of the Cross builds bonds that will last a lifetime. Good little comment from one of the players there.
And that's his perspective at this age. Go talk to him 10, 20, 30 years from now, and I think his perspective would be even richer and deeper on what that coach taught those kids.
That's right. So I love the fact that there are a lot of Christian high schools out there, a lot of Christian schools out there, and there are certainly a lot of Catholic high schools. From what I understand, there are over, I don't know, I think I saw the number one time. I think there's well over 1,000 Catholic high schools in this country. Okay. And I know that some of them, through people that I've talked to that have attended them, or that I know a parent that had a son or daughter attend them, and one of their disappointments was their expectation of the faith being implemented into even daily lessons, even lessons every once in a while in school, that the school failed to do, at least on a regular basis. But here's this coach taking full advantage of that they had the freedom to do this, right? They have the freedom to integrate the faith into their workouts, and he did something unique. Right?
That's really cool.
And it's a little play on words, right? Stations of the Cross workout, because they're called stations when you do these workouts in little pods. And I'm thankful for this story, and I'm thankful for that coach.
That's a huge hit. That's a huge hit.
It's a great story. Good story for sure. All right, brother, let's move on to something else, folks. But before we do that, you're listening to Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. You're listening to Radio Maria. Before we get to our quick Q&A at Dr. A, the Big Ten has announced before the season began that if you miss a game, if you have to forfeit a game.
As a school.
If you have to cancel the game, I should say.
Not as a player.
Yeah, the game will be forfeited, which means the other team gets a win. And last year, there was just cancellations. There was no such forfeiting. What's your thought on this? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing?
No, forfeiting, and you don't get don't get a win or a loss. You just don't play. You don't compete. Why should the other team get a win?
I don't really
They
understand.
did nothing to cause that to happen.
I agree. And I understand the fact that there's a lot of different things over the years that have caused one team to forfeit. And it's a shame, right? Because the other team fully prepares for the game. They're emotionally ready. They're physically ready. They've probably spent money on preparing for that game. But to get a loss and the other team to get a win, it's just a little much. Like, you would think that they could put something else in place.
Now, if this was normal times, but are there ever normal times?
I agree, but this is less normal.
This is because of COVID.
Yeah, this is because of COVID.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
All right, Chris, listen, let's move on to the quick Q&A with Dr. A. You have a couple questions for me. Let's see if we can get to both of them today.
Okay, the first one is your thoughts on the locker room referee issue that occurred in Ohio.
What is that all about,
I know.
John?
Is this terrible? This makes me a bad Christian Catholic radio show host. I'm laughing at the situation. Okay, so let me give a little bit of background here. This is a high school game between Grove City High School and Central Crossing High School. In Ohio. And after the game was over, they had apparently during the game made some controversial plays. But in particular, I think it was based on one call. They're inside the locker room, and they were, probably getting, changed and ready to go home.
Who's that, the players, the refs, or who?
These are the referees.
Okay, the referees.
No, I didn't mention that. Okay, I need to mention that. So these are the referees, and they were in their portion of the locker room at this high school, right outside the field. and they were, getting ready to go home. And when they tried to leave, they found the door was barricaded, and somebody, they're not quite sure who, had put a
vending machine
in front. I know Chris and I are laughing, but a lot of people, right? They want somebody to get in trouble here, but they put a vending machine, and it took three of these referees to push open the door so they could go home. Now nobody was in danger. I think they're in there for probably a total of 20 seconds, right? Additionally to what they wanted to, but clearly there was a action being taken to mention or to notify the referees what they were doing.
All right, so it's juvenile behavior conducted by juveniles.
This is true.
Young 16, 17-year-old boys or girls, they were having a little fun. Or was it caused by somebody else?
Or was it upset over a call that the officials made during the game?
Well, that's what it's suggested that it is. Now, here's the thing about that call. If we did this every time to referees or umpires when they made a bad call, we would put vending machines in front of every door that they go in and out of, right? I mean, the other day I was watching my son's 10-year-old game, and it was so funny that he called a strike. It was at the kid's, the bill of his cap, and the umpire, without even flinching, goes, "Strike 2." And the coach in the third base box was so frustrated. The only person he could turn to was the coach on the other team because he was like 5 feet from him. But I love the looks that they gave each other. And, of course, the coach on the opposing team looked at him like, yeah, that happens to us every inning too. Right? This happens every time.
But who was at fault here? I understand it was possibly one of the assistant coaches of the team.
That's
an
right.
adult.
That's right, because...
Not a juvenile.
That's right, because the principal of the one high school that was thought to have put the vending machine there, the coaches, they've issued an apology, which indicates to me and any reader that they knew exactly who had...
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it was probably the assistant coaches. I think that's where the finger's been pointed. And, of course... Those guys could lose their job over this just for doing something like that. But I have to admit, it's borderline funny, but I have a feeling at the time, and those referees don't think it's funny at all. Right?
Yeah, I saw the interviews.
Oh, you did?
They were pretty upset.
They were upset. Yeah. Here, Chris and I are laughing at their upsettedness.
Yeah. I mean, who goes, "Oh, I hate that call. The Coke machine's going in front of his door today."
Coke,
Chris,
you mean Pepsi.
Yeah, that's right. Coke or Pepsi.
Oh, Pepsi.
Brother,
Pepsi.
what's the second question? We got a minute or so left.
How is it possible to have a 35-year-old freshman on a college golf team?
There you go. J.R. Smith, 15-year NBAer, including being in the national finals with LeBron James playing for the Cleveland Browns. After leaving college, or after leaving the NBA, he always felt, in fact, he was recruited by UNC. He thought he was going to play at Chapel Hill, and part of his motivation was to truly get a degree. So he has gone back. He's at North Carolina A&T,
right,
which is right down the road here.
Yeah.
Yep. And he is on the golf team.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And so, and just to let folks know, how on earth can you play golf if you've been an NBA basketball player? You can go play. If you've never been to college, you can go to that school, of course, but you can also play any sport that is not the sport that you played as a professional.
I don't know why that's a question.
Well, how is it possible? Because so many people, of course, once they get out of the NBA, they have so much money. They're like, what's the need to go get a degree? But God bless this J.R. Smith that he sees value in that. He's going to continue to grow as an individual. He's going to keep expanding his mind.
He may get on the PGA Tour when it's all said and done.
His coach says he's pretty good, and he improves. Improves every day. Yes. So I think that's really neat. And by the way, the next oldest players on his team are two guys that are 21. Which is, of course, normal, but I think it's interesting that that he's just done this. And I think it's worth, in fact, as much as anything, it's just the ability to talk about somebody. This is another hit.
So if you wanted to leave Wingate or even go back where you work, you could be on the rugby team like you played rugby.
That's right. I could do that, brother, if it was NCAA sport. Listen, folks, I want to mention, like I did in the first half, the great quote from John Paul II, and that is, "Give thanks to God for the gift of sport, which the human person exercises his body, intellect, and will, recognizing these abilities as so many gifts of his creator." And before we go, Ed, I want to thank you for being here, brother.
Always a pleasure, guys. Always a pleasure.
This is great. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio and Radio Maria for more Faith in Sport. Take it away, Chris.
That's right. And to close out the show, we have comments from our number one fan of Faith in Sport, LSU football coach, Ed Orgeron.
Hey, those are my boys. We stick together.
You've been listening to Faith in Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. Also streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We've also been broadcasting across the Radio Maria Radio Network. So we're glad to have you all tuned in for Faith in Sport this week. Make sure you tune in again next week for more Faith in Sport. And when you listen on carolinacatholicradio.org or on the Carolina Catholic Radio app, make sure to hit that donate button to help keep great Catholic radio on the air like Faith and Sport. So donate today to Carolina Catholic Radio.